This is Interview. I'm your host, Earl Beecher. You know, I've always had the desire to interview a calendar model, somebody special, and I finally have the opportunity to do it today. Our guest is the calendar model. I would like to introduce Mr. August. Rick Patterson. He is Mr. August in the 1994 calendar put out by Blacks in Science. And so, Mr. Richard Patterson, would you please tell us who the Blacks in Science are and how come you wound up as a calendar model?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Earl, and I thank you for posing it. Blacks in Science are basically an acknowledgement of achievements of Black or Afro-American individuals.
Yes.
And we find that too much in our society we don't have the kind of role models that we typically would like to have based on the images being projected in sports and entertainment, which is fine, and I think
most of the time when you think of a calendar model, Rick, you think of a bathing beauty or an athlete.
That's correct.
You know, and I'm kind of pleased to see a scientist like yourself there.
Well, thank you. I think that's the real impetus of the calendar and also the effort of the individuals to put it together. We want to try to change the image, or not more or less change it, but more or less to let our children know that there are individuals of color and Blacks that have been very instrumental in doing things that have perpetuated society, moved this ahead in the area of technology.
Now, who is the group that has put this out?
This is a group called African Scientific Institute. It's a worldwide organization, and it has, I think, composed now approximately 320 members of scientists in every discipline from around the world. You'll find that, and looking through this publication, that it tries to look at the diversity of the group of Afro-Americans and tries to highlight all of the various areas of excellence that we have achieved.
What is your area of excellence?
My area is nuclear science.
So I'm sitting here talking to a nuclear scientist.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, that's two things I've always wanted to do and accomplished them in one time. I understand that you own a company that does away with nuclear waste.
That's correct. I am president of Radiation Projection Management. Earl, and Radiation Projection Management is a nuclear engineering, nuclear waste, radioactive decontamination, and decommissioning services company.
Would you put that in plain English for me?
Okay, we clean up nuclear waste.
Okay. How do you clean up nuclear waste? Yeah, I've heard these horror stories that you put it in a landfill or you put it in the ocean or something, you got problems.
Well, that's true. There are horror stories about, I guess you can say, about every industry, and like any technology, you have waste. And so therefore, the nuclear industry is no different. But we have solutions to the nuclear waste problem. Of course, they're not accepted by the opponents of nuclear energy, but the problems are solvable. And we have technology such as vitrification, which is turning the waste into a glass form, putting it, encasing it in glass.
I'm glad you clarified that. When you used that big word, I said, what was that again, please?
Vitrification. And it's in glassing and encapsulating the waste in a glass form. And the real...
Does glass hold radiation in?
Yes, it does. Well, it doesn't hold radiation, but what it does hold is the chemical exchange or the migration of the radioactive element into the environment. So it keeps it out. If I was to drop a glass, and what it would do was shatter.
Yes.
But if I put it, just had a raw material and set it on the ground, then the water would absorb it and take it away. So the glass stabilizes it in the form that it can't be
carried away by the water and disseminated and contaminate everything.
That's correct.
I see. You had a role to play when there was a problem at 3 Mile Island plant, I believe.
That's correct.
I wish you'd share that story with us, if you would, please, Rick.
I was working at a sister plant called Oconee Nuclear Station as a health physicist. A health physicist is a person who is specifically concerned with the effects of radiation on man and his environment. And the sister plant, meaning that it was an engineering design plant that was exactly identical to 3 Mile Island. So I knew the systems backwards and forwards. I had 4 years of the systems training. When the accident happened at 3 Mile Island, of course, our utility was queried to give some assistance to GPU, which was the utility that owned 3 Mile Island plants. And they asked for 3 volunteers to go up to assist them with the accident. And of course,
that's one place I don't think I'd be wanting to volunteer.
Well, what I learned at 3 Mile Island, I realized that I could never buy what I'd learned, and the experience was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And what I gained literally put me at the forefront of my profession.
What really went wrong at 3 Mile Island, and what did you have to do to clean it up?
Well, I think the thing that really went wrong is human error, and that's one thing that you cannot engineer out.
Now, that's a generic thing, but what was the problem?
Well, the problem is that they had a valve that when you have a unit that's under pressure, if you take a lid and put it on a pot, you can turn the heat up and the water won't boil away. So you have a pressurizer that's put in a nuclear system which allows you to raise the temperature of the water so that you can extract steam out of it. The steam is extracted through a series of tubes. And it's kind of like having...
is it recirculating water some way?
The contaminated water, the hot water, is recirculating. It's the one that's running right next to the fuel, picking up the heat, and then it's going over to what they call a steam generator, and in a plant. And what happens is you have a series of tubes that this hot water runs down. The water is about 600 degrees in Fahrenheit in temperature. So inside this...
Is it still water?
Oh, yes.
It's not steam.
That's why you have it under pressure.
Okay.
You have it under pressure.
Yes.
So you can add heat to it, and it doesn't evaporate.
Okay.
And then inside these tubes with this 600-degree water, on the outside of that, you have regular ocean water or regular water. And so the heat transfers. Of course, water boils at 212 degrees, so you create steam, and that steam goes over to drive a turbine, which in fact then generates electricity.
And what went wrong?
What happened was the pressure relief valve on the pressurizer stuck open. And of course, when you take the lid off of a pot, all of the water then turns to steam. And the pumps are not designed to pump steam, they're designed to pump water. So if you transition water into steam, you burn your recirculating pumps out, and then you have a serious problem.
And that's what happened there.
That's why the operator shut the unit down, so that they would not burn the pumps out. But it also then began a cascading system of errors that were unrecoverable at some point.
How did you go in there and do what you had to do without, glowing forever after?
Well, like anything, Earl, the bottom line is that when you understand your profession, then you understand the parameters that you have to deal with it. It's like being very close to a very hot fire. There are certain types of protective equipment that you can wear that will allow you to, get very close. And it's just, and nuclear energy is similar to fire in as much as that if you stick your hand in it, you're going to get burned. But if you stand away with tongs and other kinds of things, then you can manipulate and work in those kinds of environments. You have stay times. You realize you're being controlled by health physicists that control your stay times. You're in constant communication through headsets and radios, and you have alarming dosimeters that tell you when you've reached a certain amount of absorbed.
Alarming dosimeters?
That's correct, Earl. Dosimeters are units dosimeters. They tell you how much.
Still doesn't tell me anything.
What it says is that this is how much.
You've been here long enough. Get out, huh?
Okay. Yes, that's what it says. Basically, radiation is energy. As you add it to the body, of course, it heats up. Just like fire, it will destroy cells. Too hot, too close to a radioactive source, too much heat energy being inputted into the body, you then begin to affect things like the DNA.
So you would wear protective clothing appropriately, and it would allow very little to get through, but there would be warnings if you were getting too much radiation.
Well, that's the trick about radiation. Radiation is electromagnetic, meaning that it is a wave. It's not a physical particle that you can stop on a micronic scale. A physical particle is something like a particle of sand. If I threw it at you, you could put on protective clothing that would allow you to the sand would not touch you. But if I took a heat source and built a bonfire next to you, you couldn't pretty much stop the heat from coming through. So it's an electromagnetic wave.
I see. They're giving me the caution that we should pause for a public service announcement, so let's do that now. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This is Interview. I'm Earl Beecher. Welcome back. Our guest is Richard Patterson, better known as Rick. Rick, you were the head of the group that went into 3 Mile Island when the problem happened, and you were there to correct it. Did it become reusable? Could you salvage it?
Earl, Unit 2, the unit that had the accident, is not reusable. There were 2 units at 3 Mile Island. Unit 1, of course, came back online and has been producing power very effectively for the people of that community.
Now, what did you learn? Did you learn something that makes nuclear generation safer?
Well, what we actually learned, I think that, of course, lessons are always good things. Retrospect is always a good thing, and there are many, many lessons that came out of 3 Mile Island. The thing that I learned most that I can personalize is that I think when you're put into a situation, a very unique situation, like I was thrust into at 3 Mile Island, I learned that the creative juices came on in my head. And I was able to come up with solutions and programs that normally I would not have probably thought of. And I think that that's kind of, it closes a point with the black youth and of all youth. When you're exposed and given an opportunity to perform, that something alive comes in you and something just begins to generate itself.
Now, you're here representing the Black Scientific Institute, which is a group of people, black scientists, literally.
That's correct.
Trying to reach the youth. What is the message that you want to carry to the youth of the nation?
Well, the message is that we are the all, and the all is in all, and to those who understand that have come great knowledge. Now, I said that as a very confusing, confounding thing.
Right over my head. I need to know, you're saying that when you're into a situation you can develop. What can the youth do?
Well, youth, every person, Earl, has intrinsic talents, things that are very individual and very specific about themselves. And I think all youth, but particularly black youth, need to have that inner view. They need to look within, and they need the encouragement and the spotlight to find all of them have something that's very unique about them. And it's very scientific. It may be in an art form. It may be in a communicative form. It may be in different forms. But the human species was not created without these intrinsic properties, which go right back to the Creator. So the youth today, I think their senses are dulled through alcohol, through tobacco, through drugs, through the profanity, through the basic mundane kinds of messages that they have been sent. And we as parents and as guardians of truth have allowed to reach our children. And their senses are dull and almost destroyed to some point. And I think we as scientists, having looked at the very intricate models of creation, can understand that there's no difference between this person and that person on some level.
And some of us become nuclear scientists and some of us don't.
And that's because some of us get thrown into the spotlight and some of us don't. And that's the message.
Get thrown into or find our way into?
Well,
which was it really?
Well, I think we find our way into because we are not satisfied with seeing the masses, the devastation among our youth. So we take on a mission, and the mission is enlightenment. And when you shine a light in a dark corner, then you expose what's in that corner. So what I'm trying to do is my mission was to expose a light onto our youth so that we can see who they are, so that they can see themselves.
There are some other ways that what you're just saying could be applied. You just returned from a trip to Irian Jaya. And here you have a nation that is almost like the youth that you're talking about, which is ready to step into the spotlight, isn't it?
That's correct, Earl.
How many of our viewers have heard of Irian Jaya? Now, Rick brought a book that's got Irian Jaya here in the title, and so that you can see it and how to spell it, I-R-I-A-N-J-A-Y-A.
That's correct.
I'm not saying Aryan, and I'm not saying area of. It's Irian Jaya, and it is where?
Irian Jaya is a country in Indonesia. It's a province of Indonesia, I should say, not a country. It's a province of Indonesia.
Where's Indonesia?
Indonesia is in Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia, really in the Pacific Ocean,
That's
isn't
correct, in the Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim is just above Australia?
Just above Australia, just below the Philippines. Indonesia actually is a very interesting place. It has a population of over almost 200 million people, which makes it the 4th largest populated country in the world.
I had a couple of students at school from Indonesia, and they said to me, how many people do you think there are in that country? And I thought a minute, and I knew it was an island nation, literally.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, maybe 6 million. They said, no, it's equal to the United States, or awfully close. And I said, wow, tell me that again. You said it's over 200 million.
That's right. Matter of fact, 115 million people live in a country, or actually on an island about the size of the state of New York. So you can imagine it's a very, very crowded place.
It's a very urban area then, isn't it?
It's a very urban area. Matter of fact, Indonesia will probably be one of the young tigers of Asia in the 21st century.
I'm hearing more of it all the time. Now, what's Irian Jaya?
Irian Jaya is a province of Indonesia. It consists of about 1.7 million African descendants. And of course, I didn't know that they were there, and they're not in the history books.
They're not Oriental.
No, they're not. They are descendants of Africa.
But now Indonesia is considered an Oriental nation, or an Asian nation, isn't it?
It's, yes, more or less Malaysian, Asian, those kinds of things. But you'll find that the Indonesians but specifically the Irians, were the first people in that area. They were there thousands and thousands of years before the Malaysians came and before the Indonesians came.
Okay. Now, what's special about this place that you wanted to talk about?
Well, what's special about it is that I founded a council called the Council for the United States in Irian Jaya. And that council, the main purpose of it is it's a binational foundation to develop human resources, and also to give the Afro-American community a link, almost kind of like an umbilical cord, back to resources. Because the reality from a scientific standpoint of civilization is the ability to transform resources into technology. And if you have access to new resources, to no resources, then there's nothing for you to do. So you sit around and you play basketball and you play sports and you do drugs and you do alcohol because there's nothing for you to do. So what the council is, and what Irian Jaya is a laboratory for us to now have a real place that we can go and research the intricate materials from there, go to the earth, extract the resources, fashion it into technology, add value to it, and export that to the world.
Now, we have the technology, they have the resources.
That's correct.
What kind of resources does Indonesia have?
Earl,
or Irian Jaya in particular?
It's amazing. This country alone has the equivalent wealth of Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Nigeria combined. It has natural resources in abundance that you couldn't even imagine.
What kind of natural resources?
It goes all the way from minerals such as gold, copper, tin, tungsten, uranium.
Well, they're primarily volcanoes that came up and formed the islands, so that would make sense, wouldn't it?
I think, yes, in fact, that region is very heavily populated with volcanoes, but Irian Jaya is probably a ancient volcano from some prehistoric time.
Yes.
The other natural resources they have are things like fish and coffee and cocoa and palm oil, and the list goes on and on and on and on.
It is in the tropical area?
Irian Jaya is almost the center of the Earth. It's on the equator and about 160 degrees on the meridian, which makes it, 180 and 0 would be the exact center of the Earth. But Irian Jaya we consider it the center of the Earth, just in proximity.
Do they have petroleum there?
Absolutely. They have gasoline, oil, all sorts of petroleum products also.
And then they have plants.
Plants. Matter of fact, one of the very unique things that I found in Irian Jaya is that I talked to one of the local herbalists, matter of fact, the local herbalist, and he has two plants. One that he mixes together to cause a woman to be fertile, and another one that he can cause to have her infertility. So what we have is something that's been in practice in the country that is a natural birth control mechanism. Now, I know the American Medical Association...
Oh, they'll have a fit
they'll
over
have
this.
a fit over that. But the reality is that these people have evolved for hundreds of thousands of years using these various plants. And the truth is that the American Medical Association goes to these countries and gets these kinds of chemicals and type things, and extracts them in the plant and synthesizes them into medicine. So that it's just another link in the chain. But now, as African Americans, what we're looking for is our place in the world now as men, because now we've become of age. And what we want to do is we want to go for ourselves and develop these technologies and put these into place so that we can have an economic base and develop an infrastructure for ourselves.
Let us pause for another public service announcement. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Rick, would a person be able to participate with your council in some of the opportunities that Irian Jaya represents?
Yes, sir. Well, that's our purpose. Actually, our purpose is to develop science, research, economic relationships, business development, cultural exchanges between the United States and Irian Jaya. The African American is a very unique individual, and I think we don't realize the uniqueness of our situation, is that we can be the prime ambassadors to the world, because the world is non-white, Earl. And
there's a lot of it that is correct. You're right.
And when you get outside the confines of the United States, you'll find that many, hundreds of millions of people are black. And those people are in what we consider to be the third world in some instances. So the Afro-American can form an alliance and a bond with these and transfer technology and bring these countries along, at the same time exchanging what we have between our ears as knowledge as a fair value in exchange.
It sounds to me like education as well as technology is something we're going to be exporting.
That's correct.
And I can see where we need to do that, but we need to take care of it here at home, too, in our own neighborhoods.
That's right. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. Yes. So what we have to do, we've got some very, very distinguished members. I'm proud and pleased to announce that Mr. Johnny Cochran has agreed to become our first chairman for the Council of the United States in Irian Jaya.
Somewhere I've heard that name a few times before, yes.
Also, the Honorable Jim Hope is a gentleman that you probably name that you haven't heard, but his grandfather founded Morehouse College, or Morehouse University in Virginia. And myself, my grandfather also helped establish Fort Valley College in Fort Valley, Georgia.
Wonderful. So you have the background, really, that the black American has special advantages if we just realize it, and our own children realize it, and begin to reach out to the world.
What I would like to see happen is that the sports figures adopt the black scientists, adopt the living scientists. We don't need dead role models. What we need are live, physical people that we can touch. And as he shoots his ball that's a no-netter, then he turns and says that this is my hero, and points to a live scientist. The same way with the gentleman who hits a home run.
Okay.
All right. And so what we want to do is to replace the images that have been given us, and also specifically to be heroes to the people of Irian Jaya. They are looking at the black American, and their expectations of us are great, and we have to deliver.
And it's not just Irian Jaya. There are a lot of nations around the world that look at America in general, and I think black America can reach out very fast to them.
The reason being is I think that we've endured a very special situation here, and what we found is that the forces of life only form to mold you into who you are. And I always say that, that a situations don't create character. In other words, they basically expose it. So when you have these kinds of things, that you can see what a person's really made of.
That states it very nicely. If any of you viewing this wish to get in touch with Richard Patterson, there will be a phone number at the end where you could contact me and I can make the referral, so that there is a way to reach him if you want to participate in some of the economic development of Irian Jaya, or to be in touch with the Black Scientists group.
Also, just let me add very quickly that the Council for the United States in Irian Jaya is a private binational foundation. We're a 501(c)(3) corporation, and we're looking for interested individuals to provide those grants so that we can form scholarships, relationships, research and development between Afro-Americans in this country, and cross-cultural and cross-fertilization with Irianese people. Also, we want to bring them here to our colleges and universities. We want to send our students there.
I've had a lot of students from foreign nations, and I can tell you they go home and they accomplish great things, and so there is an opportunity. This has been Interview. We thank you for being with us, and we hope you'll be with us soon again when we perhaps can get Rick to refer us to some other scientists, friends of his, who can come in and sit down and explain what they're doing today.
I'll be glad to.
Thank you.
Do your thing.
She didn't tell me to wrap it up, but that was as close to 4 minutes as I could guess.
Yeah.